everybody. Happy Friday and welcome to Beyond the Steps. This is the show that we talk about all the things related to performance athletes, from racism, gender and equity, sex abuse prevention, nutrition, psychology, dance medicine, science, and more. I am Bree Zabrowski, co-founder of Apollo Performance Wear, here with my fabulous friend and co-host, Melissa McDaniel Grisham. And we are talking today with the incredible Lauren Ritchie about how we foster a culture of maturity and professionalism among adults in youth competitive environments. This is a big one to tackle and something that I don't think is touched on enough, but frankly, we all need to hear it. So we're excited to dive in today. Melissa, go ahead and tell everybody about Lauren if they haven't heard of her, and we'll get started.
We are so excited to have Lauren back on the show again. Lauren is an established mental skills educator, facilitator, and keynote speaker. Her areas of interest and expertise include sports and performance mental training, as well as the intersection of well-being and mindfulness. Her work in managing stress and enhancing performance has led to supporting youth in dance, hockey, music, gymnastics, and other industries. Prioritizing the profound power and importance of a coach, Lauren has created teacher and coach training programs to support mental skills and optimize leadership training and learning. Welcome back, Lauren.
Thank you so much, friends. I'm thrilled to be here.
Yes, thank you. We're thrilled to have you, and thrilled to have you to talk about this very important topic, because I got stories to tell you about things I have experienced. Boy, do I. But I want to start with just the leading question. Let's go ahead and jump into it.
So how do we define and communicate clear expectations regarding maturity and professionalism to the adults that are involved in youth competition environments? Because, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, there's no governing body. There's no standardization in dance. There's no one person that's calling the shots. So when you have all these personalities and all these different methods of training that have been passed down over the years, and all different methods of dealing with humans, and there's no standard, it's like a jungle out there. So how do we do that?
Yes. Well, let's actually start with the generous assumption and understanding that most people, when their child is competing, when they're participating in youth sport, and I'm not saying participating as in on the stage, on the field, but when they're showing up in the stands, when they are financially helping this hobby flourish, I start with generous assumptions that we want the most out of the experience, that we want our child or the child that we're supporting to thrive. And this happens not just in the dance community, but across the board. I have been working with volleyball players. I'm coming off of speaking at the Female Sports Summit, and I am here to report back that this is something that is happening in many domains. It is not gender specific. There are many sort of ingredients in this recipe that makes up a highly stressed environment by many people, and a lot of emotions, let's say that.
Yeah.
So when we talk about this idea of, well, dance isn't standardized and there is no governing body, I'm here to say that even when there is, this is still an important conversation. Up here, the hockey parents do have to do a code of ethics or code of behavior. And does that work? I don't know, because we still see some of the things happening. I think it's a great step. I think it's a great approach, but I just want to start with the generous assumption that most adults in this space do want the best for their kids, and they've put and support their children in these environments because they know that there is value. And also, we all have our own competitive spirit. We all have a lot of time and money invested in these businesses called studios and these businesses called dance competitions. And so what we're starting to recognize is that the adult's competitive spirit and overinvestment at times has an impact on the culture and the environment in which we find ourselves with these children.
Yeah.
So
clearly defining and communicating what those expectations are. Is that the directors? Is that the coaches? Is that whose job is that to communicate? And how do we communicate that in a way that says, like, look, I respect you as the person that's footing the bill. I respect you as their parent. However,
Yeah.
there, I am the one in charge, and these are the expectations we have for our program.
Yeah, so there's going to be a multi-pronged approach,
Exactly.
and it's going to require a lot of collaboration and cooperation. I like to use the performance pathway when we're talking about the culture in which we want these kids to train and compete and participate in sport or in dance. The performance pathway, I believe I've shared it before, but as that friendly reminder, it's that leadership creates the culture, culture creates the behavior, behavior creates the results.
Mm-hmm.
When we're looking at a studio environment, I like to remind the dance studio owners and the teachers that they are the leaders that are going to hold the space of what's okay and what's not okay in the culture that we stand for and want to create. It requires the teachers and the leaders to get crystal clear on the values, on the intentions, on the words and actions that they want to see trickle down into every other space and place within their control. But we're also recognizing that that performance pathway, if we zoom out, it includes the parents because the adults are going to create the culture, which creates the behavior, which creates the results. So when I
Mm-hmm.
do my parent sessions, it's easy to go, well, it's the studio owners or the teachers. But no, when we're talking about a competitive youth environment, particularly with dance, which is an early sports specialization, it becomes even more important that all of the adults in this space are value aligned. And I'm
Okay.
sure many people have talked about, identifying your values and getting clear on them. But this is where I would hit pause and say, go back. We need to revisit the why. We need to revisit what's important here and what our own measurement of success and growth is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
So this also requires parents and caregivers to do that at home with their dancers, because that is also a direct feeder into what's okay, what's not okay with our words, our actions, our intentions, and how we show up in spaces.
Hmm. So here I go off on the tangent. So we're talking about, it requires the parents to also be vision aligned and, or sorry, values aligned and to do it at home. But we can't always pick our parents who come into the studio. They walk in and they say, I want little Bobby to take dance. And you're like, okay. And then you figure out, whoa, these are not my people.
Yeah.
How how do you handle that? What do you do?
So I support studio owners first with getting crystal clear, not only on the values, because we can walk into many studio spaces and the values are on the wall, and that's a great idea. But values are verbs, they're living, they're in action. And so when we talk with studios, again, I'll go onto their website, I'll see what it is, they'll tell me what they are. But when I get really, really, I sort of dig a little bit deeper into what is alignment and what are the thoughts, words, and actions that are okay or not okay. That's usually where rubber hits the road and we're at times not as clear, or each teacher might be seeing it slightly differently. And then if you don't have that conversation, it's not consistent. And if it's not consistent, there's gaps and there's holes. So that
Mhm.
is in general the first step when we look at this, because I also have supported a few studio owners who have parents that aren't a fit or families that aren't a fit. And sometimes it might be the child and the dancer who really would be happier or
Right.
be thrive in another space. I've also seen parents being asked to leave, which unfortunately for the child means that they're also then removed. But if you are not standing strong as the leader for I kind of remind them it's almost like it's your home. That studio is your building, your walls, and you're at the helm, and so you get to say, not in my house,
Right.
Mhm.
we don't do that here. And I
Mhm.
do it, and of course, before asking somebody to move on or saying this isn't a fit, of course, there's compassionate conversations, curious conversations. We wanna make sure that everybody in the space is clear on what's gonna be okay and not okay. The other really tricky thing, and again, it's hard, is holding each other accountable. And that becomes a very tricky conversation. But if we don't do that, the behaviors or the things that you're allowing to slip and slide and sort of enter in and sneak through, they do become very contagious. They do become toxic. And I can tell you many stories where studio owners, teachers, maybe even that family knew it wasn't a fit, but nobody sort of put the stop. And
Right.
then it kept going.
I'm sort of hearing you say, and from my own experience, I find this to be true. You have to be consistent even when it's inconvenient.
Absolutely.
And, like I've had to remove people from the team the week before a competition because of a gross display of misbehavior from the parents at the previous weekend's event. And knowing that if I didn't do something about that, right, that it was going to be a banner to all the parents that you can act like this and there will be no consequences. And furthermore, it was highly inconvenient for the teachers to have to restage and the kids that were left to have to restage and learn something new by the next weekend. But the tough decision was removing that person anyway, because it affects the overall culture of the entire thing that you're working so hard to build.
Absolutely. And I will say, by you making that stand and saying not okay, and that
Sure.
there's actually repercussions when you choose to behave or act in this way, you are also protecting everybody else in the space. It is not just a boundary that says you are out, it's a boundary that is saying we will hold this
Yeah.
so that everybody in this space can trust and respect and count on the fact that what I say, I mean,
Right.
it's true, that you have an integral leader who's willing to stand up. Because I've seen also some bullying situations
Yeah.
where, because the leader did not say that not okay, or there was no repercussions, it sent the message that our leader isn't even going to protect us.
Right.
That
That's a great point. That's a great point.
yeah. So
And going one step further, I think it's important to acknowledge the other side of it, which is that accountability for yourself. Like, you can't expect people to follow and uphold this culture if you weren't absolutely crystal clear, which is what I heard you say earlier, in your expectations, right? And so when I made that decision, I was able to do so with the confidence of there is no way they didn't understand that this behavior was not acceptable, right? Like, I have communicated this in multiple ways at multiple times. Like, they knew and did it anyway. And so it gives you, when you're clear in the beginning and you know that you've done your portion, it gives you almost like a confidence to be able to make that decision and not look back with regret.
Yeah.
And I will deliver the hard truth that, yes, that requires us consistently doing self-reflection, because teenagers in particular can smell BS. They can smell when
Sure.
it's like, you're saying this, but you're not doing this.
Sure.
And also when you have these conversations with parents, whether I like to have them far ahead of time, so we're front loading the experience, and hopefully that we're not just reacting to situations.
Right.
But we have to clean up our side of the street too, and do a little bit of that inventory, and not from a space of self-judgment or blaming, or this idea that we have to be perfect. Let's get very clear: coaches and teachers are human. We are going to make mistakes. We are responsible for many different people, often at the same time. So perfection is not the goal here, but self accountability and self integrity is. And so when we are asking other people, and when we're saying so clearly what's okay, not okay, our side of the street has to be clean too, or we own up where it hasn't been.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. If you are just now joining us, this is Beyond the Steps. I am Melissa McDaniel Grisham, and this is Bree Zabrowski, and we are with Lauren Ritchie, and we are talking about a very, 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 very important topic about how we foster a culture of maturity and professionalism among the adults. The adults in the youth competition environment. And we've all seen these videos of people at basketball games and football games and hockey games, and we get to see the dance games firsthand, even though those don't usually make the viral rounds, but it happens. So Lauren has been giving us some great information. If you want to watch the show from the beginning, please go to YouTube at TP Dance Creations or at Apollo Performance and catch it from the beginning. But there's still a lot of show left, so don't go over there now. Make sure you listen to the rest of it and drop some comments, and we want to know what you think. How, Lauren, can we implement training programs? Because I'm going to tell you right now, I'm in a studio. I'm a competition director in a studio. I can see it now. You want me to do what? You want me
Mhm.
to? You want me to come? I'm paying you, and you want me to come and train and learn about something. So, how do you think that we implement programs that emphasize maturity and professionalism and appropriate conduct for adults,
Mhm.
or does it have to be formal? Like, are there different ways to do it?
I believe there's probably many ways, depending on the community, depending on the level of competitiveness, depending on just the current people in the studio space. We are very dynamic as a community. There are people coming and going and growing and all the things. I like to start with education, with the understanding of the context and the complexity of a competitive environment. I will focus on dance right now because it is different than soccer and hockey and volleyball. We are not putting a ball in a net. Stats are not being collected. There is no sort of national league. There isn't even a pathway into collegiate type programs, particularly in Canada. So
Mm-hmm.
let's start with the education and the understanding that dance is an art that happens to compete as a sport.
Mm-hmm.
And with that reality, it's going to shift our determining factors of what success is going to look like. It is going to change within every competitive environment we're in because dance is a private business in the competitive area.
Yeah.
So when studio owners have come to me in the past with this idea that parents are behaving badly, and I use that with like a very tender heart, but that's sometimes the language that's coming in where parents are texting each other and sort of spreading gossip, or they're hyper fixating on these decimal points, that one person got the 0.16 and the other person got the 0.45, and what was the difference? And those are fair questions, but let's get an understanding of what those marks even mean or how they came about. So, if
Mm-hmm.
we can start from the understanding that every single competitive environment we're going to find ourselves in as dancers is a private business which has the autonomy to structure their own scoring system, their own definition of what's important. So, when I, as an adjudicator, come, sometimes it's one mark. That's it. I give the one mark. Other times, it is going to be that I have to give up to 2 decimal points because of the software program.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it is 10 points for costume, 10 points for creativity, 50 for execution of technical components. Like, it depends. As an adjudicator, I come and I go, okay, how are we playing here? Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then also the piece that because dance is more of a private business, there is no adjudicator certification, credentialing, mandatory education. And I want to be very clear that I'm not labeling that as good or bad, because I think that there are many things that we can learn from somebody who has primarily done film and television and has one perspective, and then somebody who's been in a ballet company. It's like, let's hear all of it. But what we have to do as adults is recognize the diversity of feedback that you might get at any given competition and allow ourselves to see and sort of filter some of what that is.
Yeah.
So if you get feedback from someone that you like adamantly don't understand or don't agree with, your first stop as a parent is going to be the coach, right? Like, parents don't need
Should
to go
be.
through
It
the
should be.
but in best practices, that's what we're
Yeah,
talking about,
it
right?
should
It's
be.
like
Yes,
you get
absolutely.
these marks, you get this feedback, and it is let the coach,
Yeah.
let the teacher teach, and those are tools, and that is feedback from other professionals that they get to filter and also talk with the dancer. So there's been some times where we get feedback and I was like, I hear what they're saying, but I don't agree with that. Like, let's stick with, our
What we're
execution
doing,
that
right?
way or whatever. That's also a beautiful skill, to be open to feedback, to learn the process of discernment, and then to check in with clarity about why you're going to choose something or why you'll change something.
Sure.
So this is where we're understanding that we choose to compete in as an art form. We're going to get a variety of feedback and measurements of scale. So what I would encourage all of the adults in the space is, okay, first of all, do you accept that? Because if you don't accept that and you need stats and you need some kind of consistency,
Wrong place.
you will forever be suffering. Like,
Right. In dance, you will.
yes,
Wrong place. Yep.
in dance, there is a level of acceptance that this is what the terrain is. This is what the scope is, that every competition has a different category of level and whatnot. Can you accept that? Because if you can't, you will fight and fight and fight and be tormented. If you
Mhm.
can understand and accept that this is how it's done right now, things might change, never know. That's step 1. And then step 2 for me is always, before you even get to the competition, before you get to that high stress environment, let's get really, really clear on what is our personal definition of success here.
Mhm.
And by about, I'm going to say, depending on the teacher, depending on the dynamics, but like by 10 or 11, for sure, let the kids define it. Let the kids pick, let it be their words, let it be their focus. It should and could and will be highly influenced by the adults in the space telling them what's important, or where we're pointing that flashlight of attention and priority. But really, this is for them to start cultivating their own sense of growth, their own focus, their own definitions of success, which is essentially mandatory in this kind of competitive space.
So do you think, I think that the natural tendency for, I don't want to say everybody, but for a lot of people in the space, particularly educators, is to keep the parents at an arm's length, right?
Mhm.
And like, I'm dealing with this, you bring them to dance, you pay the bill, but like, I've got it over here. I kind of find and I think that when you keep the parents in the loop and, you prep them, you take that extra time and share with them maybe the scoring rubric if it's provided for the competition in advance, how the competition works. Because let's face it, some of the parents just don't understand what a dance competition environment is. Or like I went recently to a marching band competition, didn't really understand how that score, like you really have to, it's common knowledge to you and it's a common language to you, but it's not necessarily to them. And if they go into that knowing what to expect, it takes some of the sting away and some of the triggers away, I would think, of what they're going to experience under fire, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. We will never control somebody else's behavior. We will never control another adult, but I think this comes back to the piece of what are the pieces that we do control and
Sure.
what we can take full ownership on. So I've also worked with studios who have the 24-hour rule. It's like when something happens, there is no email, there is no text message. Everybody go to sleep. Everybody take a beat. Go, get into the car, go with your family and just like settle. So there's like a 24 or sometimes 48-hour rule. Many studios have a strong, you do not talk about the competition at the competition,
Mhm.
recognizing that there are a million ears open, there's eyes always watching. And if you want to be a community of professionalism and respect, I'm not saying you have to agree with it. I have been a part of competitive environments for almost 40 years. I understand. I have my competitive spirit and my opinions and my professional expertise. I have the feelings and opinions too, but so we have to actually recognize in the brain we have sort of that highly emotional center, right? This is what it's designed for. Then you have your prefrontal cortex, which is going to be your rational, your logical, your calm, cool, collected thinking. When we get highly emotional, because we care, right? I always tell dancers, and it would be parents and adults in the space, like, you get nervous because you care. You get nervous because you've been working on this thing for so many months and so
Sure.
many weeks and so many
Personal.
hours.
Yeah.
It is, it does. But we're also recognizing that the way the human brain works is when you get emotional, when you feel that jolt of adrenaline or that, or that cortisol, you flip your lid. That calm, cool, collected thinking flies away. That is
Yeah,
that is biology. And so when we're in that space, I had to put in some guardrails for me as a teacher, because let me be so clear, I come with intensity, I come with expectations because I know how hard we worked or I know what I want to see on the stage. And then all of the sudden, I'm watching my piece fall apart
Yeah.
in
Yes.
before my very eyes,
yeah, yeah,
right? I had to put in decisions and guardrails before I even got there. I had a moment with the kids, but I was very clear on how I wanted to behave and the words that I wanted to say in that moment. Ones that felt true and accurate, but also did not spread any conversations that I did not want, right?
right.
Because
Mhm.
what I say in those moments, my face, when they come off
The
the
face,
stage,
the
my
face,
face,
yes. The
I
face,
I am
always gotta
bad
check the
and
face.
horrible.
just and so that's my opportunity to craft the narrative, even if I myself need a timeout. That's my moment as a leader, regardless of the feelings. We collect, we create the narrative or the understanding of what just happened and what appropriate next steps are, even before they get out to the lobby, even before they get out there. I've had to take myself outside and sit on a picnic table. I've had to eat some food and, like, bring the blood sugar back up because
Mhm.
I know what it's like to be trained by a highly emotional leader. I know what it's like to be trained with a highly competitive leader who isn't being responsible for their emotions, and it only creates more panic and anxiety amongst the performers.
Yeah.
When you look at that high stress, high pressure environment, nobody needs to add pressure. We all feel it.
Mhm.
Nobody needs to add emotion or anxiety into it. It's already there. We're navigating through it.
Yeah.
So I had to get very clear because I made a lot of mistakes, because I did it wrong a lot, because I said something and it went like wildfire and misinterpreted and out of context. And I just went, no, that's on me. Like, I have to know better and I have to do better. And so from that aspect, it does take that practice of self-awareness. I have to come up with strategies before I get there on what's in alignment with how I want to be seen as a leader and what's in alignment with how I want the children to act and what I want them to say and what I want them to focus on. Because we all know if it's been disappointing. We all know if it wasn't our.
Sure. That's what I learned in the later part of my career in the director realm is like everybody knows it. It doesn't need to be said, right? Like in that moment, we can talk about it when we get back in the studio and we can analyze and we can, fix and we can do all the things. But like in that moment, everybody has two eyes, two ears. They can see everything that went down and we all know, right? And everybody's going to process that differently, which is where the self-control comes in and the leadership comes in, frankly. So
You
I
ladies
definitely,
are so good. Y'all are awesome. I have not mastered this skill at all.
I distinctly
I'm
remember like the transition of when that clicked for me. And it was towards the very end of like right before I did Apollo and left that part of my journey and in the rearview mirror. But I definitely wish I would have learned it sooner because it definitely inspires a whole new level of calm and peace in events like that where you're typically stressing yourself out to the max.
oh
It's
my
the
gosh,
worst.
I'm
Well, and
horrible.
but if it is on your radar and you have the conviction or the want to do better and to sort of like be in more alignment, that's what you need, right? Like that's the genuine interest and that's what allows it to grow. Like I said, I did it wrong a million times. I
Sure.
put my
Yes.
foot in the mouth. Like I don't know. And then let's be real, like when you're on day 3 of 14 hours in this theater, words are barely coming out of my mouth properly. Like
Right.
I am forgetting
Right.
names. I
You're
am like
exhausted. Yeah.
you're exhausted. And so it is that level of self-compassion that we want to be generous with ourselves and others when we quote unquote behave badly. But like, do you have a desire to do better, to get more curious around what would be more effective?
Mhm.
And it's even I love Brie that you were saying that you had those moments where you kind of looked around and everybody knows like that wasn't our
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
But this is how clear and almost minuscule we can get is that that can be the saying of our studio when something didn't go well. It can be wasn't our best or wasn't our day. But the minute that either the leader or the kids or the parents, the minute we start to go into, well, they missed the lift and they fell out of their turn, and the pointing and the blaming and the shaming, that becomes who you are as a studio. That becomes the conversation. So if we can give in our culture of how we do things here, like how we want everyone to behave in the hard moments, the easy moments, there actually is, I would argue, some front loading there. Can you win with grace? Can you win with a sense of humility? Like there, that also counts of how do you want to show up in the highs and the lows. But we
I love that.
can give literally snippets of group understanding, of team understanding, where we can say that wasn't our best, it wasn't our day, or that's really frustrating, wasn't what we hoped, but then you leave it. And the rest will be debriefed together at the studio. And the rest will be debriefed through the lens of the coach and the creator, not the person in the stands. And
Right.
it doesn't matter, every single sport documentary I watch, I feel validated and confirmed, because when things are hard, the people in the stands, the people in the audience have strong opinions and are quick to turn.
Sure.
And then when things are going well, oh, look, oh, we're all
Yeah.
happy. We cannot let outside observers dictate, tell the story, and impact what we know to be true about our process and our growth and our mission as a team. We cannot let external forces dictate our training, our mood, or what we know to be true. And that is why I hope that we can continue this conversation around, I understand this whole idea of like keep the parents at arm's length. To me, I feel like, again, there's like a push there, as opposed to we're a community. We all have roles and responsibilities. The only way this is going to work is through collaboration. So let's talk about where that is. And the reality that this generation of parents has more information, more opinions, more advice, more access to worldwide choreographers, and the process of dance, that of course they're going to come with like some overwhelm or an abundance of information.
Sure.
But I made a post on my Instagram that it's that sort of Dunning-Kruger effect, where just because you have a lot of information doesn't mean you have an understanding of the process or an expertise in what true growth and development looks like in this arena. But I don't blame parents. They are literally inundated on their phones with informations and opinions and other people's feedback. And sometimes it's in the room and other times it's people in Poland. Like there's so much coming in. So let's do our best to educate, but hold firm as to here's the roles and responsibilities. And I'm a pretty big advocate by the time a dancer is 10 or 11, because let's be clear, we need the parents to help and support those little ones to practice their dances. We are an early sport specialization. They need sometimes somebody to hit play. They need sometimes somebody to go like, oh, I think your teacher's doing a star jump. Like, oh, that doesn't match. Okay, great. So let's not say, oh, parents don't get any part in this, because
Right.
they are a huge part of this. They're collaborators. That being said, by the time a dancer is 10, for sure 11, be a fan, enjoy the show. The dancer by that time just needs the parent to book the studio, and then they get to go into the studio. They have their teacher's voice in their head. They know their corrections. They know what a bent leg looks like. And even if it's like, well, yes, but it would be so much better if I was in there and I was pointing it out and I was scratching the back of the leg. And it's like, now we're out of the roles and responsibilities of a parent, because they need you to be a source of unconditional love, and they need you to be a stable source when the chaos of competition and convention comes. Like, you get to be their source of stability and love. And what a beautiful what a beautiful thing that not everybody gets.
Mm-hmm.
So that's sort of my piece with the arm's length is let's be
I
real
love it.
about where we're at. And also, in order for a dancer to truly develop a sense of internal validation and internal confidence, they're going to have to own a lot of this work, and they're going to have to know and trust that they can do it themselves, and that they've got this, and that they know when to ask for that feedback, and then they take the feedback and they go work on it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important to recognize, I always we like to be transparent on this show. Like, we're saying all this, like, it's very black and white. Like, we understand fully, like, how hard this is to take these steps and make it and be consistent and navigate ego and emotion and all the things that come with competitive environments. And so we're by no means saying this should be easy. I can
Right.
tell you, there's a lot, like Lauren said, I learned by making a lot of mistakes. And I can tell you that while I may have mastered some things as a director, I then definitely, like, being a parent now of a boy in competitive soccer, I seem to have amnesia because all of the lessons I've learned have now gone out the window, and now I am the crazy soccer mom that needs to get perspective and recognize that every day, and I'm working on it, but that is a whole nother segment. So it goes out the window as fast as it comes in, and we just have to rein ourselves back in, I think.
I have a peer who's a director of a program,
Oh my gosh.
deep, like deep, knowledgeable, amazing dance teacher and educator. Her daughter is about 8 or 9, and then coming home with emotions about where she is in the formation or the fact that she's not
Yeah.
on stage at this part, and she literally said, like, "Lauren, I know all the tools.
Yeah.
I actually, as the choreographer, I can explain to my child what's going on with
Yeah.
Mhm.
certainty." And she goes, "It just feels so different." And so
Wow.
I
It
respect
is it
that.
is horrible. It is.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's an out of body. Like, I'm floating above my body going, you know better. And then I just talk to the hand. I just do it anyway. And it's like, it's just this appalling, like, it rages from within. I don't know what to say about it. It's very actively working on it, though. Like, recognize it. Step one, actively working on it. It
Right.
is really bad. Anyway, but I love it. So excited about being a soccer mom, but geez, I got to get it together. So anyway, in the spirit of that, welcome to Beyond the Steps. For those of you just joining, I am Bree Zabrowski with Melissa McDaniel Grisham. We're chatting with Lauren Ritchie today about how we foster a culture of maturity and professionalism among adults in youth competitive environments. This is a big one. To go back and listen to this episode in its entirety, please go to YouTube at Apollo Performance and TP Dance Creations to see this and all of our episodes. But keep watching because we still have more left. Lauren, what ways can collaboration with various stakeholders, such as sports organizations, educational institutions, community leaders, help in fostering a culture of maturity and professionalism?
That's an interesting question when you're looking at what organizations exist for dancer. What organizations exist for parental support in the arts?
Mhm.
Yeah.
There's not a ton, I'll tell you that.
No, there's
I
not.
I
And they keep
do.
evolving. Yeah.
Mhm, mhm, and I mean, hey, we're here, we're starting the conversation, and the piece around parental involvement within the rehearsal process is actually where I'm currently doing some research because I understand the nuance and the complexity of this. The long-term athletic development model is what we hold as the gold standard in Canada. It's the LTAD, and they did the most research when it came to how do we keep kids active? How do we keep them engaged in the thing that they love? How do we keep movement something that feels good and exciting and nourishing and not like punishments and haves and shoulds and, measuring all the things? And it's best practices, and also it says not to early sport specialize until you're like 12. And I just went, well,
Well,
so
yeah.
close. But I
Right.
have found the most impactful books for me to be and I would say Instagrams and podcasts and books and all the rest. For me, it has been leaders like Dr. Lisa D'Amour, who has multiple books around the emotional lives of teenagers and under pressure. Dr. Becky Kennedy, who has Good Inside. And even though she's talking about younger kids, the reality is so much of our reactions and our responses are parts that are in were sort of maybe part of our childhood or our competitive
Sure.
spirit that we're needing to renegotiate. Um, Every Moment Matters is a great book for coaches and educators because it's largely like you got to get your values right. You have to get so crystal clear on what is the culture that you're creating. You got to get clear on what accountability is. So I have found the most helpful and impactful resources, fellow sort of professionals and people who are generously sharing in the public, because this is really asking every adult in this space to do self pause, self reflection, self planning, getting really clear even amongst the family about how are we going to celebrate our wins and what feels like growth and how do we know, because so much of dance isn't measurable or consistent or has that rubric. But if we can get into the car and just cheer our faces off that we finally got that section, or that like their genuine artistry was just like beaming out their face and it was just like there was pure joy on the stage, and like that's the kind of conversation. Let me be so clear, because there are times where it's like, well, that sounds like winning doesn't matter, or like, that it sounds a little
Yeah.
too fluffy. The reality is that we need all of it, right?
Yeah.
I was a highly competitive person. I came to win. My sister,
Yeah.
she was just she was happy to be there.
Yeah.
She was competing. She wanted to do well. But my mom will tell you, like, she had two very different competitive dancers and was
Are
just
you
like,
are you the oldest? Total
"Mm-mm,
sidebar. No, you're
no."
not. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Yeah, I have I got some fire and some leadership in me that was second kid. But
Wow.
I looked at my sister who was doing all these things, and I looked at the senior dancers, and I don't know why, it's just who I am, but I was like, "Imma do that."
Ah,
Like, and I'm years behind them, and I'm like, "Mm-mm, I can try that," or like, "That's what I want," and so it
yeah.
became this, like, fuel. So when we talk about, like, every single competitor even comes with a different experience, and let's be so clear, I wanted to win. I didn't like losing, but I never blamed my competitor. I was never the victim in the loss. It was always, "What did I miss? What needs to be worked on?" Again, sort of that high level of accountability and ownership. But all of us are gonna need to negotiate that, because there is no winning in the dance world. Each competition will have places,
Yeah.
but there is no
When
winning here. There is no podium. There's not even agreement amongst different competitions of what would be at the top.
Right.
And
Right.
the thing that gave me so much, like, appreciation, and actually the studio owner was like, "I should send it to you and we can share it publicly if we can keep enough of it confidential." But they did a whole worlds competition, and they got their marks back, and there was no consistency among how they were graded. And if it was that judge, it was 7 out of 10. If it was that, it was 4. If it that, it was 10. And it was just like, even across the world,
Yeah.
we are going to navigate people's artistic preferences and opinions and what they value as adjudicators and as judges. So again, it kind of loops back to that piece of, can you find so much love and commitment in the process? Can you value growth? Can you understand that we are building resilient humans, not by protecting them and putting them in places where they're definitely going to win, not in doing things for them or making sure that we're part of their growth? You develop resilient humans by slowly and gently nudging them to do hard things. We
Sure.
want them to feel uncomfortable. We want them to feel big emotions, because the reality is that we can hold the space for their big emotions. If
mm,
they're upset and we're upset, then it must be really bad.
right.
But if we as the adults in the space can be what Dr. Lisa D'Amour says, the outsides of the swimming pool. The kids are in the deep end. They are playing. They are having an amazing time. Inevitably, somebody gets kicked in the face. Somebody gets tired. Somebody gets hungry. And they are going to come to their parents. They're going to come to the adults in this space when they need a breath, when they need a break, when they need a moment of feeling their feelings.
Yeah.
And if we just jump into the middle of the deep end with them, nobody is better.
I love
So
that analogy. That's great.
Dr. Lisa Damore is my favorite. If I could, I should just show up with like a little fan club shirt. I'm sure I wouldn't be the only person in it, but it's such a beautiful analogy for just what our job is in competitive environments and what our job is when our kids are going through hard things.
So,
And then we need somebody
yeah,
to support us as we process.
yeah.
But
So for those people on the like that are sitting here going, "Oh my gosh, like I need to do so much better." Like reassure everybody out there. Like is it too late? Like we can make these changes at any time. Like it's
anytime.
not too late
Yeah.
to make a different choice or a different decision.
Yeah. And kids often tell you what they need or what they want or what they don't want. So we had a situation recently where there was some team dynamic conflicts. You have a bunch of teenagers who spend a lot of time together, who sometimes go to school together, and like groups change depending on the environment, all the things. And one had opened up just saying like, "Oh, yeah, me and this other dancer just we're not very close anymore." And there was, a couple little tears and you're just, "Okay." And I just flat out asked, like, "Is this something that adults need to intervene with? Is this gonna be impactful in a team environment? Is this going to be dangerous? Is this gonna like, is there anything that I need to know as the adult? Do I step in?" And the minute I was like, "Do adults need to step in?" It was like, "Oh gosh, no, 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 no,
Right.
no, 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 no." And I said, "Here's the deal. If it gets really bad, if something takes a turn and there is so much drama and gossip in the team, which often the
Yeah.
coaches and the teachers might not know about, we're
Yeah.
not in the group text, nor should we be." I said, "Could you just send me a red siren? I won't even ask questions, but I'll just like, you don't have to say anything, but can you as the choreographer and as the teacher, can you give me a heads up if like my group is falling apart and I don't know it?"
Sure. Yeah.
And that you guys haven't sorted it out, because the reality is most of the time they will sort it out or they'll figure it out. So that was sort of the agreement that we came to. We put some language around it, but I mean, team dynamics are tricky, but I want to be as the adult in the space. Sometimes I just need to be an ear. Sometimes I just need to listen.
Right.
Yeah. I love it.
Absolutely. And
I
do
love
not do not get involved. It's not always required. If
But
you are just now joining us, this is Beyond the Steps, and we just had an amazing conversation with Lauren Ritchie about how we foster a culture of maturity and professionalism among the adults in the youth competitive environment. You can watch the show from the very beginning on YouTube at TP Dance Creations or at Apollo Performance. Please invite your friends to watch, share it, comment. We want to know what you think. All of our episodes are also there. So after you watch this one, go on back. Find other episodes that are related, especially the one with Lauren last time she was on the show, and watch those as well. But if you are a first time viewer, you may not know, but Lauren knows because she's been here before. We give homework. So Bree, you want to bring homework in?
Yes. So, Lauren, we've talked about a lot today about a lot of things, but what is one thing you want our listeners to challenge themselves to do between now and next week's episode to make progress in this regard?
take a moment and go back, even if you've done it 5 times. I've probably done it 10 to 15 times. Go back and get really anchored in what's important to you. Your values. Why are you supporting your child in dance?
Mm,
Why are you a coach or a teacher in the dance space? And from there, how are we measuring success? If it's values aligned, because we know we'll never control an outcome, right? We'll never control things that are just up to chance, and just whoever shows up to adjudicate or what other competitors there are. That's none of our business in so many ways. Our job is to get super aligned with our values, get very clear on how you're measuring success. And then as the adult in this space, say it till the eyes are rolling in the back of their head, right? Make it about all the ways in which you love seeing them light up, or you've seen the work ethic working and there's been so much progress. And if you hyper focus on the end result, on the end mark, you're essentially telling them that that's what counts and that's what matters. And when we come from that understanding that dance is an art, we're choosing to compete in it as a sport, but the essence of what we're doing and the way that we're growing sometimes is very invisible. Sometimes it's very personal. So let's get clear on what are we actually measuring here, or what are indicators of success? And then, yeah, say it until you get the eye rolls and the I know.
And even keep saying it then. Yeah, I love it. And thank you for that homework. So you have Lauren's homework. Our homework here on Beyond the Steps is always the same. We want you to take our Steps Initiative course. This is the foundation for this show. It's a free 4-part course series that's going to tackle things like racism, gender inequity, sex abuse and prevention, nutrition psychology, and of course, dance medicine and science. It's going to provide evidence-based resources and information for you to sort of expand your knowledge on your own and give you that pathway. It is 100% free. So please, Melissa's going to pop that link up right now. Please go take the course. We've had coaches take it, parents take it, kids take it, teams, staff members take it. There is no limit to who can take this course. And again, 100% free, because when you know better, you do better. Lauren mentioned some great resources today. So make sure you go back and watch the show, including the book, Every Moment Matters, for coaches and educators. So take a look at that. And again, listen to the episode to get her other suggestions and recommendations. Lauren, how can people get in touch with you? I know you're really accessible. So
the two main ones are my website, withlauren.ca. And then Instagram, I do a ton of reels and posts, and that's Lauren_M_Ritchie, which you can also access through my website.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here, Lauren. We really, really appreciate you. We cannot wait to have you back, hopefully later in the season.
I am so grateful. Thank you, friends.
Thanks,
Thank
Lauren.
you, Bree, amazing co-host and friend. Thank you, viewers, for coming back week after week and joining us for Beyond the Steps. We are so just blessed and honored to have been doing this for 4 seasons now, and we're ready to just keep going. We will be back with another great episode next week with a repeat guest and a member of the Beyond the Steps family, Ashley Mowry. So mark your calendars and don't miss it, 3:30 Eastern on YouTube and on Facebook. In the meantime, share this episode, comment, like, subscribe to our channel so you can never miss any of the content that we put out. And do your homework. All of it. Until next time, continue your journey beyond the steps. We'll see you next week.
Bye.